Hello, welcome to Bus Stops. My name is Nick. Today we're going to talk about a picture at a bus stop. These are all the pictures, by the way. I don't want to show you. There's a lot of pictures. I tried to scroll a little too fast so that you couldn't really tell how many there are. I'm trying to keep that under wraps. I'm thinking about doing a video where I ask people how many pictures, or excuse me, how many bus stops there are in the GRTC system and see what their answers are. So anyway, I'm going to stop at this picture here and talk about it. This picture is of a lake, and it's got other stuff in front of it. It's got a lot of trees in front of it, and some electrical boxes and gas pipes. And what are these? It's fiber optic maybe, and then like electrical bit. So the kind of overall effect that I was hoping to achieve with this image was like the kind of piercing light of the lake in the background with the foregrounded elements of the tree, and then all those. I'd do without these bits and bobs down here, to be honest. I'd just take that out. There's a few things that kind of throw this image for me, though. I think on the whole, I like it well enough. And by the way, I feel entitled to say whether or not I like something that I made. If you are seeking to, I have to imagine that if you've watched enough of these, you might be interested in sort of the tricks of the trade of how to critique art. And all I can tell you is that you should avoid saying I like it or I don't like it. That's not all I can tell you, but I can at least start there, because that's where a lot of my professors started in college, when I was in a 4-year degree to talk about pictures. One of the first things I learned in my studios, I think everyone learned it, all of the freshman art students, coming out of high school, 18, 19 years old for the most part. Not everyone jumps right into a 4-year art degree. But anyway, a lot of us young folk were inclined to talk about things in terms of I like this or I don't like this. And that was something that our professor sort of stamped out of us. Not like in a coordinated method, but it just came up enough in our early critiques to be like, hey, don't say it. Don't say it like that. Not because it's irrelevant what you personally like or don't like, but just that it's possible to talk about so many things before talking about whether you like it or don't like it. But yeah, I feel at peace speaking that way of my own work. If you send me a picture, which, by the way, I wanted to shout this out at some point, but bury the lead a little bit, but I wanted to open up the invitation to anyone to send me a picture, and I'll talk about it. If you go to my About page, I think it's possible to find the email address of this channel, but I'll say it out loud, too. It is nick@dayyt@gmail.com. So just nickatday@gmail.com. If you send me an email with a picture attached, I'll critique it. I'll talk about it. I don't just have to talk about my own work. So I'd love to talk about your pictures if you're curious to know about it. And if you do that, I will avoid saying I like it or I don't like it. I will try to give you as much constructive observation as I possibly can. But my picture, I feel totally at peace saying that I only kind of like this picture, and that's fine. I think there are a few things that I could do to improve it in the editing process. I would probably like this patch of earth right here. So what I was trying to do, which again is another thing you should never, ever say when you're being critiqued by your peers, because it doesn't matter what you tried to do. It really only matters what you actually did. That's an important lesson for life, but also in art. But again, I feel we're all friends here, so I feel comfortable saying it. What I was trying to do was to emphasize this patch of light and have that almost be the brightest object in the whole frame. And so I really loved how dark these trees were relative to the plane of the lake. And so I wanted to but all of this stuff mucks it up so much. So like this especially just kind of ruins it visually sort of connects these two bodies. And so you have this sort of patchy, nasty scrub of dirt. And then you have the shimmering lake. And so I was like, I loved how you still sort of caught a horizon right there on the far side of the lake. And I loved that light. And then, of course, the top part of the frame here, where there's this sort of layering of trees, and this begins to kind of fold. It doesn't always happen with a big mass of trees, but like just this body of a brighter tree right here that sort of arcs right like that, from like kind of bulges out to the right side of the frame, and then it sort of folds in on this, or rather folds up from this darker space. Yeah, there's some nice motion happening in the trees, and there's a lot of separation. Like sometimes it just, I always want to give advice of like how to make a picture like this if you want to do such a thing. And so if you want to make a picture of trees, make sure there's like enough separation between the individual layers of trees. And I've been trying to make pictures of trees for nigh on 15 years now, and so it takes some experience, I guess. I'm not clearly not a professional in the sense of I make my living taking pictures of trees, but I do like to look at them. They are quite beautiful. And so I've always considered how to make the most interesting pictures of trees I possibly can. And this one was close, but still got some issues. And so these boxes are, like I said, the obvious issues, but being constrained by the location of a bus stop and how I made this picture, sometimes I just sort of settle for what I think is best. I can't really spend hours and hours and hours at every bus stop considering the full aesthetic potential of every direction around me. I usually only carry one lens too, so I'm often somewhat constrained by the focal length that I brought with me. But that's all beside the point. Yeah, we talked a lot about different things. We talked about critique and trees, but not too much about this image. I don't know that there's too much more to say. Again, maybe someday, maybe not with these pictures, but maybe with other pictures, I'll show you the editing process a little bit. But I think that cloning out this stuff, and yeah, that's the box. I didn't mention this box. That needs to go away. And this tree needs to meet the ground to be a little bit more satisfying. The fact that these dark masses are connected, like the dark above the lake horizon and then the dark below, that doesn't bother me because it has a nice repetitive quality, like tree. But this, the fact that those two light streaks are connected from here to here, is just super sloppy. And again, short of walking across the street and pulling that stake out of the ground, which is probably illegal. It's probably a crime against someone, but yeah, you just can't control for that. And I don't know that those things are stopping this picture from being great, but I'll mention another thing about critique and then I'll be out your way. But yeah, part of the reason that you just present your work and you don't make excuses, you don't explain what you would have done better. And part of that is developing the discipline of just looking at what is actually there, because not to get all philosophical about it, but when your imagination clouds your observation, it's hard to actually, when you just plop this photo down and somebody, all they have is the photo. And when you try to explain so much about what you intended to do, that sort of you're freighting the viewer with way too much information about things that aren't the photo, if that makes sense. As a photographer, as an artist, you have to constantly struggle with what's in your imagination versus what you can actualize, what picture you can make, what song you can write, what garment you can sew and weave together or whatever. And so, it's always a joke of nothing will ever be as good as what you imagine it to be in your head. And a lot of times as you begin to try to make something, you realize that materials can be unruly and ideas are not as fully formed as you imagine them to be. And so, yet nonetheless, there can be plenty to talk about, or view or consider within a work of art. But when you either apologize for something that isn't the way that you hoped it would be, or you try to explain why something didn't work out, that can basically just kind of close down the horizon of viewing what is actually there. And so in this series, I make jokes about being okay with saying that I don't like this, or at least mentioning some of the things that bother me about an image. But I hope that at least you can, as I try to analyze what is actually there, I hope you can see more and more, rather than just seeing a picture of trees or a lake or whatever. I hope that the process of deconstructing is not reductive, in terms of what you consider and what is in front of you, but hopefully opens up the horizon a little bit in terms of being able to see more within the image, and that the image not becomes more than the sum of its parts, but at least is more visible. Because when you see trees, or you see a lake, or you see even electrical boxes, it's easy to just sort of visually gloss. I do it too. I mean, that's part of the reason I'm doing this series is, I mean, I wouldn't personally choose, I guess I did personally choose, but like prior to making this image or this series, I wouldn't have been like, the best place, listen, friend, if you want to make good pictures in a city, you got to go to the bus stops. That would not have been my bent. And it wouldn't even necessarily be my bent right now. I wouldn't advise you, if you want to make pictures of your city, to start with the bus stops. But I just have lived in this city for 10 years, and I was finding it hard to like make new work, make new images within a city. And so when you take out the variable of where to stand, it at least forces you to consider new aspects of the things around you. I would never have stopped to make this picture before, unless there were a bus stop. And so that's part of why this series exists, is for me to kind of force myself to look at new things in the world. And so I hope as I talk about it, that you see a little bit more in the world too. Anyway, thanks for listening.